Welcome everybody to the Fantasy Football Buff channel, the channel dedicated to the craft of Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Josh, and all we do on this channel, man, is talk Dynasty, whether that be general strategy, player rankings, or even if we're just hyping up rookies, man, we do it all. So if Dynasty is something you're into or trying to get into, I would highly consider smashing that subscribe button. The goal of this channel is to help you dominate your Dynasty League for years to come. Right, for years to come. So that being said, in this video, I will be giving you the top 5 tips that will help you dominate your Dynasty League. Now, I don't care how your startup draft went. I don't care if you're a rebuilding team or just won a championship, man. I don't even care what players are on your roster. If you do these 5 things, your team will inherently improve as each year passes. So without further ado, let's get it. Guys, the NFL is wrapping up. The Dynasty season is upon us. It's this offseason, the moves you make that are going to determine how you do for the foreseeable future, man. And the best way to improve on that, to kick it off, is through our Discord channel. Join our Dynasty Discord community. I'll put the link down below, where we have probably only 20 guys right now. We just sit there and talk about potential trades, talk about potential landing spots for rookies. It's a great time and an excellent resource when you're trying to navigate this confusing world that is Dynasty. So definitely come join us, man. It's free and it's a blast. Highly recommended. All right, guys, let's kick it off with tip numero uno. The tip, and this is not only the first tip I'm going to talk about, but arguably the best thing you can do in your Dynasty League, and that's be patient, right? Patience will drive you to a championship in Dynasty. I have a follower who has DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Terry McLaurin on his Dynasty roster, and he sent me the screenshot of his team, and the man, well, he was undefeated, of course, and I was like, dude, he must have sold all of his future rookie picks to get the team he currently has. That's the only explanation. And once I started talking with this follower, he revealed to me that Devontae Adams was a waiver wire pickup back in 2015, that he traded a late second-round pick in 2016 to get Tyreek Hill, right? And neither of them produced right away. Clearly, that's how he got them. But now through patience, he has multiple top 5 Dynasty wide receivers on his roster. And I know it's not that easy, right? I understand that. But the reality is the fantasy community is so damn reactionary, right? So I'm not saying that every waiver wire pickup that you're going to acquire is going to be Tyreek Hill, man. Just the opposite, right? Never have blind faith in a player. But do your research, watch the man play, and if you believe in their talent or ability, then don't freak out if they're not performing right away. There's a lot that goes into being an NFL star and performing in fantasy. Look at the situation as a whole, right? What does their personal life look like? What does their professional career look like up to this point? What does that locker room look like? There's a lot of pressures on these players, especially these rookies, especially during COVID. So, I mean, man, if you're going to ignore everything else in this video, if you leave this link right now and take nothing else away, just be patient, right? Don't give up on players, right? And if you do that, your team will naturally improve. Don't forget, man, A.J. Brown was the wide receiver 50 last season during his rookie year through the first 10 weeks of the season, and people were leaving him for dead. And now look at him, man. He's a consensus top 5 Dynasty wide receiver. Relax, be patient, and it will pay off, I promise. Tip number 2 for dominating your Dynasty League is learn how to buy low and sell high, man. And now before I even start talking about this, I really need to emphasize that my default reaction is to not trade, right? I'm never gonna be trade happy. I'm never gonna force a trade. I've, talked with people who feel like they need to trade a player or need to trade for a player. And if you do that, you're gonna end up making a trade that you're gonna regret in a year from now and lose a lot of value. All the successful trades that I've accomplished in my Dynasty leagues have been over the course of multiple weeks of discussion. So to kick it off, man, I gotta make myself as clear as possible. You could have had the perfect Dynasty startup draft, right? And you could nail every single one of your rookie picks for the rest of the league. But if you never trade, right, if you exclusively focus on your team and don't interact with your league mates, you are inherently making your team worse by not trading. I mean, the reality is most of your league mates will not have mastered patience like you have after watching this video, right? So a player will have a bad month or struggle with injury during their rookie season, and their view on this player will get tainted. Now's the time to go reach out and make some offers to try to acquire this player. Now, my biggest piece of trade advice for dynasty players who are trying to successfully make trades in their league is to have a consistent, open dialogue with everyone in your league throughout the full year, right? If I have identified a player that I want to buy low on, then I'll shoot the guy a message. I'll say, hey man, what are your feelings on X player? What do you think is going to happen with X player in the offseason? Start a conversation first. Don't just shoot a trade offer. Gauge their reaction before you even make an offer. Man, as we've all said 1,000 times on the channel, dynasty value is subjective. Start the trade talk. See what they would want in return for this player, just to see where they stand, man. Like, if they believe that X player is the GOAT, you're not going to acquire that player, right? I love DK Metcalf. I want him on my dynasty team, but I would have to give up so much to get him that it wouldn't be worth it. It would end up harming my team in the long run. So sometimes you have to realize you're just not going to be able to acquire certain players. The trick is to buy players before they take off, right? You have to buy, DK Metcalf before he blows up this past offseason. Buy the Terry McLaurins, buy the Jonathan Taylors before they explode, man. That way you're not having to pay when they add to maximum price. And that right there, buying low, is how you make a dominant roster. Now, you can't be in the mindset of refusing to trade valuable players and expect people to want to trade for you, right? Sales 101, man. Stop focusing on downplaying the player you're trying to trade for, right? And then stop focusing on building up the player that they don't have any interest in, right? When you start talking to this guy, if you want to complete a trade, you need to know what their team needs. You need to know what their team is struggling with from a positional perspective, and then make them an offer that they actually want. If you focus on everyone winning that trade, not just ripping off the other guy, not just because you want a specific guy, not only is the trade more likely to happen, but the trade is more likely to be fair as well and improve your team moving forward. So something to keep in mind, man. So you need to know your league. You need to, of course, know the value of dynasty players. So naturally, subscribe to our channel, man. And we're going to help you find the future A.J. Brown and lock them into your team before they hit that peak value. But all this can also be said for selling high, right? If you don't sell players high, then you are naturally losing a lot of value, right? The reality is nobody wants Todd Gurley in a dynasty league right now. Nobody. You would have a hard time getting a third-round pick for him right now in some dynasty leagues. 2 years ago, you could have received multiple first-round picks for Todd Gurley, man. There is no honor in holding a dynasty player throughout the duration of their career, right? You don't get a medal. It doesn't help your team. If anything, it just hurts it, man. For context, I put this into practice. I sold Dalvin Cook this past season. I got a lot of hate for it, man. I got a lot of criticism from my own league mates. How could you sell Dalvin Cook? He was a first-round pick for us in our startup draft. But I know going into 2022, I received Dak Prescott and Calvin Ridley, and both those guys will still be balling in 2022. I know that for sure. Dalvin Cook, on the other hand, between his injury history and the short shelf life that fantasy running backs just statistically go through, I think that I sold him as high as I possibly could, and I think my team will be thanking me for years to come. So I'm not telling you to go sell your best players right now, but it's not a bad idea sometimes to apply that strategy. And I'll tell you this, man, you'll thank me 2 years from now. Tip number 3, talent over everything, man. Talent over everything. I don't really have a large spiel on this one. I think the title really says it all, but just look at it this way, right? In Dynasty, you're the general manager of your team. Players you draft, players you trade for will determine the success of your team for years to come, right? And you want players that could be traded by their real-life NFL team and still produce, right? You want players who maybe their coach insists on using a running back by committee, but that running back is still going to produce and be the head of that group. You want a player who their team is going to want to sign them to an extension, man. Prioritize talent over situation. And the way you do this is you watch some college football, right? Do your research, look at the stats. That's how you find your guys, man. Personally, I would rather take a good player in a bad situation over a player I don't believe in a good situation every day of the week in Dynasty. And a little underrated piece of advice here that I'm going to throw into this category as well is get to know your players. Man, get to know your guys. Like, what are they doing in the offseason? Are these players that go off and make these crazy fitness montages in the offseason? Like, what does their personal life look like? And what was their journey like to the NFL? I love players like Josh Jacobs, like even Baker Mayfield, who worked their asses off to get to where they are today. And I know that work ethic will continue. And it's this element that a lot of people don't talk about that can make or break a career. And it's this element that makes Dynasty Fantasy Football so much fun. Talent over everything. Tip number 4 for dominating your Dynasty League is acquiring players who are trending up. Right? Very few people know how to calculate Dynasty value because it is so different from redraft value and it's so incredibly complicated. So we're going to run through it really quickly and break it down very simply into 3 different parts. You need to consider what this player has done in the past. You need to project what they're going to do this upcoming season. And then you need to predict what their fantasy value is going to be like throughout the rest of their career. And do not underestimate that future element. Right? Do not underestimate what their future career might look like for a specific player, not only from a fantasy production itself, but also a future trade value as well. A great example, a lot of people are asking me recently about Julio Jones, right? Someone who is somehow still the wide receiver 24 in Dynasty rankings on Fantasy Pros. And people who want to win now think he might get traded. He's arguably one of the greatest wide receivers in NFL history. And I have zero interest in Julio Jones. Right, I understand he might help you win now, but players ranked behind him in Fantasy Pros like Jerry Jeudy, like DJ Chark, like Tyler Boyd, Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, I would take every single one of those players over Julio Jones. Right, because I understand maybe Julio outscores them going into next season, but 3 years from now, if you continue this mindset of getting players who are going to help me win now, but don't have fantasy viable futures, you're going to be sitting here and realize you have no tradable assets outside of your rookie picks. And so if you want to get better players, you need to rebuild, make moves, whatever, you're not going to have anyone there, man. So don't sacrifice the future for the now. I can't say this enough. Do not sacrifice the future for the now. I will never make a trade because I need to fill a lineup during bye weeks, man, because you're going to lose that trade and you're not even guaranteed to win the week. So it may seem silly, but your fantasy players clearly are your main asset for your Dynasty League. It's not like there's some kind of monetary value that you can exchange for free agents as well, or for players on other teams as well. And if you let players age out and you stick with this mentality of I'm trying to win now, I'm going to acquire exclusively veteran players, your team's going to struggle. And in 2 years from now, your team's really not only going to be losing because you're going to be losing those players, but you're not going to have any assets to trade to improve your team as well. So you need to walk the fine line between productivity and youth. That's the secret. Walk that fine line between productivity and youth. There's a balance between having those young stud cornerstone pieces on your team, right? The Patrick Mahomes, the Justin Jeffersons of the world. Have a couple proven veterans on your team, sure. Robert Woods is an excellent example. Keenan Allen, a proven veteran who's going to help you week in and week out. Then, on top of that foundation, get a couple young, high upside players that could break out, that could move up into those higher tiers, whose value will only continue to ascend over time. This way, you're giving your chance to win now, but also giving yourself and your team some upside and tradable assets down the road. You find that balance, you do that dance, your team will never be in a full rebuild. The fifth and final tip to dominate your Dynasty League is to focus on a 3-year window. When a lot of new guys get into Dynasty, they like to throw out 5, 8 years from the road from now what they're investing in. And I think they forget how long 5 years really is. I mean, do this mental exercise with me. Where were you 5 years ago? That's like an eternity, man. We have no idea what the NFL is going to look like 5 years from now, man. So because of that, I focus on a 3-year window because I believe that is the time frame that I can most accurately project, where I can build for the future while still not just completely guessing, like preparing for 5 years is. Because we don't know what's going to happen during that time frame, man. We don't know what players are going to get hurt. We don't know what trades you'll make. We don't know what trades NFL teams are going to make. We don't know what NFL coaching staffs are going to switch up. It's just so much time, man. It hurts your team if you sacrifice the now to invest in way future picks or in a lot of high upside sleepers that are no guarantee to break out, man. I mean, just think about it. 2 years ago, Carson Wentz and Jared Goff were both locked and loaded as top 5 dynasty quarterbacks. They might not even have jobs coming into 2021, man. Nothing is a guarantee year after year. There's a lot of turnover in the NFL, especially with all these talented rookies coming in. So find that balance, man, because if you focus exclusively on the future, especially 5 years from now, you are literally losing money. You're literally catching money on fire, man. The buy-in for our Dynasty League is $100. And by not competing, you are losing $100 every single season. So $300, $400, $500 later, you're going to give yourself a chance to go for a championship. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So, but I need to be clear, right? I need you to understand that if you're rebuilding or trying to get picks in 2021, I don't hate it. You know, you have to do that on a year basis. But I will never entertain offers that hinge on a lot of picks in 2023 and beyond, man. All that's doing is weakening your team up to that point. All you're doing is losing value. Your team is becoming weaker up until 2023, where hopefully players will come in and improve your team up to that point. So don't focus exclusively on the now. Don't focus exclusively on the future. Find that balance and your team will be good. All right, guys, let's recap. 1, be patient. 2, learn how to trade. 3, prioritize talent over everything. 4, acquire players who are trending up. And 5, focus on that 3-year window and your dynasty team will be successful. If you do all these things, I don't even care what players you have on your roster right now. Following these 5 things, doing these 5 actions, your team will naturally improve and you're going to build yourself a sturdy foundation that will carry you to multiple dynasty championships for years to come. Again, sub if you're new. We will be back soon. I appreciate you. Peace.